I want to welcome everybody to tonight's show. We have a special guest and a very important guest to me. It's Peter Koutoujian, the Sheriff of Middlesex County.
Thanks, Rick.
Who I'm very glad to have here.
Great to be back.
I think that there's been a lot of things that have been going on, and I think it's important that everybody get to find out some of the things that have been going on.
Sure. I mean, you were the. I think you might have been the very first show that asked me to appear when I became a newly appointed sheriff in January, and I think you very well. Your show, Common Sense, could have been the very first show that I did as sheriff.
Well, I really appreciate that. I really do. It was only common sense for you to.
This is common sense. That's right, isn't it? Isn't that all it is in the end?
Yes, but I guess there's a few things that I'd like to talk to you about. I know that sort of, especially with the economic climate, people are always concerned about where their tax dollars are going and what their tax dollars are going for. And I know as sheriff, you control a significant portion of that money. And as well, you help protect a significant portion of that money. And one of the things I guess I'd like to start with is how do you develop the inmates into citizens that are responsible and, in a sense, add to the fiduciary wellness of the county and state?
It's a great. That comes to the core mission of the sheriff's office, Rick. I think that the core mission is really on two prongs. One is public safety. It's keeping those inmates secure in the setting, in our facility, to serve the time for which they were sentenced by the court in response or in responsibility for their crime. And that's really important that people serve the full time that the court gives them, and that they be secured so that public safety can be preserved and justice can be preserved. The second sort of prong of it is also public safety, but it's a very different sort of a part of it. Each of the men that are sentenced to the Billerica House of Corrections are really are sort of, they're sentenced out of the district court. On the criminality scale, they're on the lower level of the criminality scale, mostly for drunk driving, drugs or alcohol, breaking and entering, usually related to drugs or alcohol, and or domestic violence. They're an average stay of about 240 days. They're sentenced out of the district courts. And so we have them for just a small window of time. But during that window of time, we have the opportunity to address a number of the reasons that led to their criminality. And that can be substance abuse or mental health issues, educational or vocational issues. And if we can kind of get a number of those components of their lives kind of back in order and on track, then when they get out, public safety will be preserved because they won't reoffend, thereby no more victims. And they'll be getting on to a better life where they can get a job and pay taxes to us instead of coming back to me in a setting where we pay $40,000 and or more for me to house them here in Middlesex County. So it's a tax savings, it's a benefit to victims, and it's a benefit to society.
Right. And so what are some of the programs that you've recently been developing and working on? And I know there was one that was promoted or reviewed in the papers recently that's had a great deal of success.
That's right. The culinary arts program you're speaking about?
Right.
Yes. The culinary arts program is one that we've had for a number of years now. It started under Sheriff DePaula, and it's a 12-week, very intensive sort of set of classes, 6-7 hours a day. The inmates wake up at 5 in the morning and they begin going to classes and do kitchen work. And in the end, after 12 weeks, they actually graduate of this class, not out of the institution, but at this class with a certificate, a Serve Safe certificate, which is required really for any type of restaurant job. They get a certificate from Shawsheen Technical High School, and they also get a 12 credits towards a Middlesex Community College degree when they graduate, when they finish this as well. And they get a marketable skill that they can take outside when they get outside, get a job, and hopefully get on the right track. It's really one of the most, and we had Ming Tsai at our graduation, which I think is why some of the media paid attention to it. It was a very powerful day and a good day in the office.
Well, that's fantastic. What are some of the other programs that you're working on? I know before the show started, you mentioned that you were developing 2 new programs.
That's right. Well, we were the first sheriff's office in the nation to have what we call Xerox Corrections to Career program, and this is done in partnership with Xerox. We are training again for 12 weeks inmates in digital printing, digital imaging, as well as scanning, all the latest technologies, so that they can get out there and again have a marketable skill set for when they get out, and something that they will have a certificate from a private printing association, as well as from the Koutoujian Tech. This again is something that will lead to their having a better opportunity to get out and not reoffend and not sort of be a threat to public safety. And then another one we're hoping to get online soon is a custodial certification program, which is much more to it than people, it's not just sort of cleaning and sweeping a floor. It's a significant use of heavy machinery that does a lot of this work, as well as the mixing of a lot of the chemicals that are not necessarily green.
Chemical safety.
It's chemical safety, and there's a lot of certifications and education that will go on in this, so that when people get out, again, they'll have an opportunity to get that job. And we know that there's a number of risk factors for people to reoffend or recidivate and come back to see me and hurt someone. Substance or drug abuse. It's about homelessness. It's about job opportunities as well. And if we can kind of get a couple of those things dealt with, then I think we can protect people a lot better than if we don't do any of these programs. They come out, they're going to reoffend. It's just what's going to happen.
So you were speaking of the programs that have been developed and are in development for the male portion of the population. What about for the women? Because a lot of people think of the Billerica House of Correction, and I think that's primarily it for the Middlesex County Sheriff's Office, but you also have a facility in Framingham that's for the female population.
That's a great question, Rick, and to be quite honest with you, it really is. We only take care of the men. We've got about 100 to 120 women at any time that are being held pre-trial, meaning they're kind of waiting for their trial. They've not been convicted, but they're being held on bail or without bail. About 40 to 50 of those women, and about 50 to 60 women, they're actually serving a sentence. But we don't take any of the women. They've always gone to Framingham, to the Department of Corrections in Framingham, which is a very difficult setting. It's not one that's conducive to rehabilitation. So we're actually beginning to. We can't take our women back. We don't have a facility to do so. And it would be, the challenges would be too great at this point. Although we are looking into creating a regional women's facility with Suffolk County and maybe Norfolk County joining together to create something. But what we're trying to start to do is more programming. I'm on the board of directors of REACH, which is Reach Beyond Domestic Violence. And these towns are also part of this, part of REACH, and we're going to be doing some programming with our women over at Framingham. And we're even starting, we're going to be putting our first woman out on a bracelet, a work release situation. The first time in about 20 years here in Middlesex County. And this, again, will save people money. This is, we classify them very carefully, and the person we have in mind for our first in 20 years, again, it'll save people, and the women are more expensive actually in their settings. They're $50,000 to $60,000 per year. We can get her out of that. We can get her on her Medicaid so we're not paying for her health care. We can get her into a job situation so that when her time comes that she eventually will be freed up, she'll have a much better shot at it. And the whole time we're watching her on her bracelet. I mean, you can see her in real time. Every minute of the day you can see exactly where she's going. Is she going to work? Is she going home? Is she going to work? Is she going home? So we'll have a good track on this, as we do with any bracelet programs, and I think that's going to be a very big step for us as a department to address the needs of women so they don't recidivate. And I know that you may know this, Rick, but people should know that women are 5 times more likely to be the primary caregivers of children when they're incarcerated than men. So meaning that if you take a man into the Billerica House of Corrections, much less likely that he will be the primary caregiver for children. If you take a woman, you're now disrupting an entire family. 85% of those kids go to grandparents or other relatives. 15% go to the state for foster care. Very disruptive on a family, and I think we can do better by those families because the more we disrupt families, the more business we create for ourselves in the future.
Well, it's also and I don't know what it is, but the number of children that are children of parents who are incarcerated, how many of them become incarcerated in the future, and I'm sure it's over 50%.
No question.
So then, that's one thing that a lot of the public doesn't sort of recognize. They want the cheapest sort of correctional system they can get, but they pay in the long run because now, say you had 2 kids that go into to the correctional system and you had a parent, you got $120,000 a year as opposed to if you paid for the program. And
That's right. That's
know.
right. And it's really important. I call this, I've coined a term that I've been trying to use lately. It's called trickle-down corrections. Because when you think about that one inmate who did something wrong and should be held accountable, if you can get them on a good track instead of recidivating, and with good programming you can reduce recidivism by 25 to 35%. So significant savings to the taxpayer, significant benefit to public safety and victims out there. But if you can get that one person on a right track, the likelihood, if they have children, the likelihood if they're incarcerated, the children of incarcerated people have a higher rates of truancy, failure in academic settings, higher rates of incarceration, and so this antisocial behavior. So if you can actually get these people on the right track and a healthier track, then their children, their grandchildren, and so on will be healthier and stronger, and we won't have to pay for them, and they won't be offending other people. We can create, again, less victims out there.
One thing that I saw in the newspaper that was interesting to me is you got a new 911 facility.
That's right. We're starting to work with a number of cities, Melrose, Wakefield, Stoneham, a number of North Reading, to create a regional 911 setting with them, wherein they will have a sort of a 911 center in that district that will be run by a corporate governance, basically. It wouldn't be run by us, but we are the conduit. We're the conduit for the monies because we can take grant monies to set things like this up. And the idea is that instead of each city or town having dispatchers on the line all the time, this center will have dispatchers for them. They can put more police and fire back on the streets, which is, again, good for public safety.
Right. So what's happened with your tenure so far at the Sheriff's Office? What kind of things have occurred? What did you learn since your last visit here? How, what do you see the future as?
I've learned that I can't do things as quickly as I'd like. It's been just over 9 months, and it feels like I've been in here for years, quite honestly. It's such an immersing and intense atmosphere. And a lot of things that I want to do, and you just can't do them all as quickly as you'd like. And you've got to pick certain priorities and move them along, and things just don't happen as quickly as you'd like them to move forward. But I'm very proud to work not just on these inmate programs, but one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is the work of the corrections officers.
Right.
It's corrections officers sort of get a raw deal, I think, in the law enforcement world. Police officers and firefighters and first responders are sort of out in the community. People know who they are. They shake their hands. They say thank you, very appropriately so. But my men and women don't sort of get out into the community in that way. My men and women protect the public from some of the worst people ever. And as a matter of fact, they spend 8 hours a day inside the walls with these people.
Right.
And yet people don't understand the difficulties of that job. They don't understand the nobility of that job and how important it is in this chain of public safety. I call our corrections officers the silent guardians of public safety. And it's a tough job. Concomitantly with this type of job, as with any law enforcement, I don't know if it's any worse, but corrections officers have higher rates of suicide, heart conditions, cardiac events, substance abuse, and divorce. And I think a lot of that's because people don't appreciate the work that they do every day. And it's very difficult work, and they should be appreciated for that work.
Well, when you look at the statistics in the sense of police officers working with a large population, what is it, like 10% of the population may be at risk. When you're inside the prison, the population is, you have 900 inmates, 900 inmates are at risk.
Right,
so your population...
They're all at risk, 100% at risk.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Then the CO is working with that population.
That's right, that's a good point.
Everybody they come into contact.
Everybody is part of presenting a stressful and difficult event, basically.
Whether they're detoxing or...
Right. It's a very tough job, and I mean, and I really wish that people could understand, if they see people from the Middlesex Sheriff's Office or any Department of Corrections or any place, just to kind of appreciate the work that they do. The camera lights shut off in the courtroom. You get this notable criminal, and they're being arrested, and they're you can see them maybe on the street being arrested, and then maybe you see them in the courtroom, sort of with the court officers. Then they disappear from the public view. And where do they go? They come up with us for weeks and months and years at a time. and no one ever sees them there, and no one remembers, and no one cares until they're back into court, and then they